Hey everybody, let's take a minute and go over what is going to be on this guy right here, the AP style exam that you're going to have coming up pretty soon. And I'm going to use the mind map as kind of the is the outline for what's going on as a review. Now, I would, if I were studying, I would know a lot of these topics as we go around. But as I have said in the past, these topics, the method of initial rates and the integrated rate law, those are the topics that are really going to be focused on in terms of probably counting for the most possible points on the exam. Okay, I'm going to ask definitely at least one method of initial rates and one integrated rate law question in the open-ended section. Now, the layout of the exam is going to be fairly straightforward. Okay, I'll pull up this. Now, it's going to be AP Chem style, and it's going to be designed to be about an hour and 45 minutes. Although I will let you take the full 2 hours because we are in class from 9:08 to 11:07. Okay, but at 11:07, I'm collecting the exam. Now, there will be about 40 multiple choice, and there'll be 4 or 5 open-ended questions. Now, the multiple choice questions probably will be mostly from kinetics. Now, I say mostly from kinetics because there will be some questions here that will cover or will encompass the summer assignment and and then your previous chem class. So probably namely intermolecular forces. I love those intermolecular forces questions. Now, in terms of the open-ended questions, you know that there's going to be at least one method of initial rates, and you know that there's going to be at least one integrated rate law question. And when I give those questions, or when I find them, my goal is not to make them tricky. My goal is to make them encompassing, making sure that they reflect what the AP exam is. Okay, I'm going to say that there's going to be one wild card question, which means it's going to be an open-ended question that is on previous material. So that'll be good. And then there will be 1 or 2 others that deal with kinetics. Okay, so there's 1 or 2 other kinetics questions. Now, when I think about multiple choice questions, going back to the mind map, okay, when I think about multiple choice questions, I really think of related rates questions. I think of average versus instantaneous rate. I think about collision theory. I also think about things like mechanism and maybe half-life. Okay, those are things that I generally think of when I'm thinking of multiple choice questions, and maybe even determining the units of the rate law. Where which of the following is the correct units of the rate law. Okay, and so those are kind of the multiple choice. The open-ended questions, again, method of initial rates, integrated rate law, maybe even a lab question about how to set up or what you need in order to do the method of initial rates. I would expect that there's going to be some questions that deal with graphing. And so let me go here and pull up a different thing. So there's a bunch of different graphs that we have to keep in mind. So the first graph that we have to worry about is concentration versus time, and that gives us the rate. Okay, now usually that's shaped like this, and the average rate would be here from there to there. That would be the average rate. And then the instantaneous rate is the, let me do that in a different color. I'll undo that. The instantaneous rate is the slope at a point, and then so that's going to be different than the two. Okay, so that was the first graph that we talked about. Now the second graph that we talked about had to do with first and second order rate laws. Okay, so if we're going to plot first and second order, ln of the concentration of something versus t, okay, and that's going to be like this. And if it's linear, that means it's first order. So this is a first order equation. And then we can do this, which is 1 over the concentration of some compound versus T. And that may be like this. So this is a second order. And the reason, and then we can pick which one it is based on which one gives the linear graph. And so the last one is for activation energy, where we have the ln of k over 1 over t, and a graph of that, the slope of that is going to give us the activation energy. So those are the real graphs that you may see. And then the last thing that you're going to see graphed, that I'm sure you're going to see somehow, some way, shape, or form, is you're going to see a reaction coordinate. Where you have something like this. And so based on this reaction coordinate, we have energy here versus progress. And so remember, we can label this with things like, this is the energy of the reaction, the enthalpy, so that's delta H. From here to here is the activation energy. We know that it's one step. Okay, so those are all the types of graphs. And I bring them up specifically in this review because these graphs can be confusing, and it's important for you to keep them all straight. Okay, so I'll say that. And so the thing that I use to keep them all straight, so I know what's going on, not thinking of this, because this I know because of the shape of the graph. But these four I keep in shape. I keep because of the axes. I look at the axes. So if it's concentration versus time, I know that that's a rate. If it's ln or 1 over of the concentration, I know that that's this is the integrated rate law. And then the last one is ln of k versus 1 over t. Okay, so those are some things to keep in mind when you are hanging out and doing some review and studying. So when we go back to the mind map, here, let's keep in mind that there's going to be, again, I try to hammer home the point. The 40 multiple choice, 30 out of the 40, 75% of them are going to be kinetics related, and they're going to come from, kind of what kinetics is, average instantaneous rates, relative or related rates, maybe some collision theory questions, what's the units of rate law, maybe half-life questions, okay? Mechanism also. And so then in terms of the open-ended questions, all but one are, going to be kinetics related. And so there's going to be the method of initial rates, the integrated rate law. Those are definitely two. And so, I mean, when we're looking at what to review, I think it's important to know how to do method of initial rates. I'm not saying that I'm not going to include method of initial rates as a multiple choice, or the integrated rate law as multiple choice, but in general, those stay. The main points for those are in the open-ended section. So I would definitely look over these 4 AP problems that we have here. 1, 2, 3, whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's this AP practice over here, and even the questions in the book. And anything that has answers to it, you can look at some of these things, and a lot of them have answers. So yeah, so that's what I would do for looking at this exam. And good luck. Have a great day.